We recommend organizations take a crawl, walk, run approach. The first step is not the grand AI strategy, it's visibility. What do you already own? What is active? Where are the risks? Why does this visibility have to come first?
When we move to agents, the difference is it's not assisting, it's acting, right? So now it's taking all this deep context and knowledge that it has, but it's doing something.
Let me use this free tool so that I can save my notes, make life easier. What are they doing there?
Robert, free's never free. Free is you are the product. So if you're in these open source models and you're rolling on the web, you have no guardrails, you have no steering on this side, you are feeding data and they are using your data to give you a free service. They're learning and growing.
Once a company has visibility right into its environment, what comes next?
Governance is the steering wheel, not the brakes. It doesn't stop AI from working. It tells AI what halls in the corporate office it can travel down, what rooms it can enter, which doors should stay closed. Governance gives direction, accuracy, and control. Understand where we are and where we want to be. We can plot a very sequential journey to make sure that you are having success on your journey to agentic AI.
Andy, I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and walk through what we're seeing in the world of AI, what matters not only for our clients, but honestly, what matters for us as a business. AI is changing how organizations operate. And the question is not if companies will adopt AI, the question is how will they deploy it responsibly without repeating mistakes that others have made as we've seen through the journeys going so far. I'm Robert Cini, CEO of Integrato, and I'm here with Andy Cohen, president of Integrato. And over the last 3 years, we've worked with many organizations at every stage of this AI journey. Some are holding off, some are experimenting, some are going deep, but without a clear structure. Today, we're going to talk about what we've seen, what's working, what's not, and how to approach AI in a way that can actually scale. Andy, by the end of this conversation, what should listeners walk away with?
Yeah. By the end of this conversation, anyone listening should be able to walk away knowing three things. First, what is agent washing and how do I spot it? Second is what a digital office should look like before you activate AI services and features. And third is where to start. If you want to see where your own Microsoft environment stands today, that's a good place to start. Most of businesses already have AI capabilities inside of Microsoft 365, Robert, but they have not fully activated them and they have not connected them to how the business actually operates. AI is evolving very fast. First, it was chat, which was basically like running a web search or a Google search on steroids.
Andy, we've been interacting with a lot of clients and businesses out there, and we're seeing a lot of pressure on executives right now. Everyone is asking about AI. There's a sense you need to move quickly, but we've seen that it's not the real issue is speed, it's direction. So the question becomes, how do you move forward without creating new problems inside your business? Andy, what are you seeing in the market right now?
Yeah, Robert, the market reality is that quite simply, a lot of these AI initiatives are just not delivering value. They either stall or they never really show business impact in the forms of productivity and profits. Usually, it's not because the tools are incapable. It's because the environment is not ready. Right? There is a sequence to the Microsoft tech. So let me give you a couple illustrations to put some details to this. Samsung, major organization, had employees paste internal locked code inside OpenAI ChatGPT. Now this wasn't a model failure in technology. This was unmanaged AI use with no guardrails. Air Canada had a similar item. They had a chat bot that was focused on the wrong refund guidance and gave the customer the wrong answer. The company was held responsible. Again, not rogue AI. This wasn't a breakthrough where AI went wrong. This was an ownership and accountability problem on the data. And many AI pilots never make it into production. So these are not technology failures. Robert, these are sequence failures.
So, Andy, that reminds me with cloud washing of what we saw years ago with the cloud. I've been in this journey a little bit, some time now, right? Going from DOS to Windows, Windows to cloud, right? Cloud to maybe space. But as we're on this AI journey, many cases we've seen before where companies took advantage of the naming, right? They basically had legacy solutions that they branded the word cloud around it, right? Cloud servers for cloud architecture, cloud subscriptions, right? When they were just doing a monthly licensing. But this architecture underneath, right, never really changed. We're seeing a similar pattern with AI now, right? A lot of products are being labeled as agents, but the question is whether are they truly agentic or just existing tools with the new label? In simple terms, Andy, what is the difference between Copilot and an agent, and why does this difference matter?
Yeah, and Robert, I'm going to talk to that, but I want to really hammer down on that agent washing concept, right? This is something that Gartner put out a massive research report in April, just a couple months ago, and they coined this phrase. And what's actually happening on this side is vendor side agent washing. This is things where they're talking about being truly agentic AI, but they're actually just repurposing older automations that have been around for a long time. So when you ask the question about the difference between sort of an agent and a co-pilot, I want you to think literally about a co-pilot is supporting you. It's an assistant that has deep intellectual data, has lots of facts and patterns on this, right? But is there to support and help you through it. So you ask, it answers. It's a wonderful place to help you get started, to walk down a journey. When we move to agents, the difference is it's not assisting, it's acting, right? So now it's taking all this deep context and knowledge that it has, but it's doing something. So that would be my simple way of explaining what's the difference between like a co-pilot chat and an agent.
So what I'm hearing you, if I hear properly, is that contents over speed is what's important, right? So if your business is not organized, AI does not fix it, it scales it in an appropriate way, right? In some cases, it may make the problem worse. The way I think about an AI agent, sometimes it's simple. It's like hiring a very capable employee on day one. They may be electronic, but they potentially work with the same level of impact as a human. So Andy, how should a business think about giving that AI employee the right context?
There are thousands of companies right now that are marketing agentic AI. And based on this research report they published out, there's only a small number that are genuine. 130 is what it says. So the agent washing item that I want everyone to be aware of is being considered for agentic development and really just being repackaged to older tools. This is not true agentic development. This is automation, right? So agent washing is really important term for everybody to grasp because you want to make sure you understand if you're paying to create true agentic actions, you don't want to get duped into just running legacy automations. So the simplest way to think about this is a co-pilot assists. You ask, it helps. The agent acts. You define the boundaries and it executes within them. The risk is not the capability itself. The risk is activating an agent that can access and act across systems before you define what it should touch and where it can go.
So Andy, let's make this practical. A lot of leaders are asking about Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, and other AI tools. The question is not only which tool is smarter, right? But which tool has access to the right business content and which one is operating within the right boundaries. Andy, how would you explain the difference between using Copilot inside of Microsoft 365 versus using an external AI tool?
Yeah. So context over speed is such a critical component of this. And it really is how I answer this question, Robert. If you are going in naturally to OpenAI's ChatGPT or Anthrop's Claude or some of these other models, XAI, Grok, DeepSync, there's many, many tools out there. All of these tools are wildly capable, but it's the context that makes them accurate. So when we're in these open free tools, right, there's a misnomer of what free really is. Free is you are the product, your data, your attention, your access. So if you're in these open source models and you're rolling on the web, you have no guardrails, you have no steering on this side, you are feeding data and they are using your data to give you a free service. They're learning and growing. When you enter the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem, you're not in a free platform. You've already paid to have a license to access your M365 tenant. So Microsoft has formed Copilot, which is the user interface for artificial intelligence, what they call the UI for AI. And there's a huge difference here. The difference is that when you access the chat feature inside of your Copilot that's included with your license, it is not training the model. It is not leaving your tenant. You are not the source of the product anymore. So if you are just running free to free, you're already paying for Copilot in your subscription, we would always recommend that you run there because it has protections to keep that data safe within your tenant versus when you go in the open models over the web browser, you really don't know what's being trained, what can be cited to other people later. You lose the protections. So if it's apples to apples, Copilot wins because it's guarded inside of the tenant that you've already secured in trust.
And just to make sure to go back to an analogy of sort of a virtual human, right? That Copilot is more of that employee that's working for you, has a contract, is understanding your rules, versus some of these external agents are more of this one-off contractor you bring in to do a specific function, but you have to be careful if you're not understanding what they could do with the information.
Yeah, exactly, Robert. I mean, AI agents, they can write, they can analyze, you can automate, they can respond, but only if you onboard them the right way. So staying in your example for a moment, if I were to bring in a freelancer, right, I'm focusing on a task and outcome of project, and I'm going to give them access to data that's relevant to those things. If I'm bringing in a senior level employee and I'm now onboarding them, I'm going to give them a lot more information and latitude. So in this analogy, if we're bringing in a freelancer, that's us going outside. We don't want them to see anything they're not supposed to. But if we're training an internal agent, we're going to onboard them like a high knowledge employee and make sure that they have that information, right? Because otherwise, this really bright employee is going to act on what they see, not what we're training them to.
All right. Well, transitioning a little bit, right? We understand that this is not a switch you turn on as a company, right? It's more of a sequence that we had talked about that some clients go through. And in some cases, hearing the experiences of some clients, it feels like 5 stages of acceptance. I've heard denial, frustration, bargaining, and concern, and then maybe finally acceptance. But is there a healthier path?
Oh, most certainly, Robert. The 5-stage AI journey, if I'm just breaking it down into simple terms, is really a healthier sequence. It starts with interested. I'm interested in AI. I'm interested in what it can do for the business. I move from interested to ready. I'm ready to set some policies. I'm ready to look at my features. I'm ready to look at how it operates. Then we move into activated. Activated is where we start turning features on and we take a person from the shallow end of the pool into the deep end. Once we're through activated, we move to automated, right? These are things where it can take action and do work. And then the final step in the journey is agentic, which is what everyone's looking to get towards. So my opinion today, Robert, most businesses are somewhere between interested and early activation. This means that leaders are paying attention. And we're looking for ways to drive deeper knowledge work and to help our staff succeed. So that is really a practical place for people to start using AI and really have it help them liberate in their day-to-day roles.
You know, with the risk of jumping ahead, where we see problems when companies try to jump straight into automation, right? Or agents without doing the work in between. It's like hiring that executive employee again, having them show up at the front door of the digital office, expecting them to find their way around with no onboarding or tour, no map, no boundaries, no clarity on what they should touch. Andy, what is the functional areas that need to be in place before we start touching the business data?
So Robert, we often look for ways to drive really technical definitions using simple analogies, simple ways to explain it. So when we think about all the complexities of Microsoft 365, we've used a digital office, like a digital corporate headquarters as a physical building as a way to tell the example. So if you think about this for a moment, every business or at one point had a physical office. So when we go to the front door, there's locks, there's doors, there's badging systems. I want you to realize this is our Entra ID. This is our identity. We know who's coming in and out. That's that layer. When you access the building and you're inside, well, you're going to go to a conference room and do some collaboration. So, well, that's Teams, right? Then you have a filing system because we have to keep business data and we have filing systems in a filing room. So that's going to be SharePoint and your OneDrive business. No corporate office would have sensitive material without an alarm system. So we're going to bring in Defender and Purview to act as your security guard. And then, of course, to run the building, You have maintenance schedules and all this. You need a back office. So the back office on this side is like our ERP and CRM systems, so Business Central and Dynamics. We call this collective technology the digital office because each room is going to map to a part of your Microsoft environment. Now, this foundational corporate office, this corporate building, right, is actually got opportunities to be the same setup, but actually more from business to business. So let's make a couple industry examples quickly. The building layout's the same, but the contents could change. So if you're a CPA firm, well, in your filing cabinet is client data. If you're in manufacturing, it's probably production schedules, work orders, and cost sheets. If you're in distribution, it's inventory, it's customer pricing, it's vendor information. The same building can support these different businesses. And Robert, this is why context matters on your thoughtfully connected journey to AI.
So I know we're more virtual, but if we did have a building and we had sort of like a rooftop bar, maybe we'd want to lock that down from some new employees.
We would. And honestly, Robert, the power platform's kind of that hallway and the wiring between all these rooms. So we would set the identity that only certain people can get into that hall and can access the elevator to get to the bar on the top floor. But that's really what's amazing about this Power Automate platform is this also creates wiring and access pathways throughout the building so you can create different tools, safeguard different elements. You can really build out something that's going to allow the business to be more productive and grow with this advanced technology.
And again, all this is for when you are implementing an agent, you are giving them those boundaries, those rules, so that the content's safe and is known for them. But let's go back a moment, right? We see the problems are companies are still trying to jump straight into automation, right? That's where the coolness is, right? And they're building agents without doing the work in between. It's like hiring that executive employee, having them show up at the front door of the digital office, expecting them to find their way around, no onboarding, no tour, no map, no boundaries, no clarity on where they should touch. They might be going right for that rooftop bar, right? So what foundational areas are needed to put in place before AI starts touching this business model in this office that you rendered?
Yeah. Robert, I think that is probably something that our audience resonates with. I think a lot of people are looking for the sequence and what is a foundational readiness? How do I know if I'm ready to activate? And my honest opinion is it comes down to just three areas, right? The three areas are first, identity, right? Who has access, right? The second is the devices. Where is this data and access coming from? And then finally, the data itself. How is the information stored, shared, labeled, and protected? If those areas are not understood, then AI activation becomes guesswork.
So for companies that are interested and ready, help them understand what most organizations are skipping. Before AI touches your data, you need to understand who has access to it, how is it structured, and where it lives. Andy, what are the core areas they need to review first?
Yeah, so we built a tiered assessment for this, Robert, because we know a lot of folks in the market are right now excited about the opportunities of AI, but aren't really sure how to get there. So the first level of the assessment, we put a couple levels on this, knowing that people are at different stages of this journey. They might be a higher level ready, or they might have already partially activated. So the first level is complimentary. We do it as a 45-minute subscription intelligence review. We internally refer to it as an SIR. It takes about 45 minutes. And what we do is we review as a direct Microsoft Cloud solution provider. We actually review your licenses. So are you licensed for the features that you need to activate? Are you chartering a plane with empty seats, right? Where are you at in this journey? And then after we understand the license and the features, we really want to look at your secure score. So for those of you that are not familiar in the audience with secure score is Microsoft's way of cataloging all of these connected policies and giving you an out of 100 score of how secure you are today. So when we do this complimentary review, we're going to focus on your identity, we're going to focus on your secure score, and then we want to make sure that you understand how this sets your tenant for success. Now, many people in this audience, Robert, are going to be more interested in a deeper assessment. They are really excited about AI. They want to move faster through that maturation cycle. So for those, it does take us a lot more time to run through this. So there is some fees for some of the Copilot activations. But what we do is we map everything that Copilot would be able to see. right? What is the context and the steering that it has access to, so that if you turned it on tomorrow, you have a full picture. See, a lot of times, Robert, people think AI is what creates risk, right? It reveals it, it doesn't create it. The risk is already there. So this Copilot assessment at a level 2 helps you understand it. And then the last and final bucket to go all the way through is we do an investigation of all of your settings, security policies, and give you a pathway to where you want to go.
Gotcha. So how does a business actually see where they stand? What is the first step?
Yeah, the first step really is to get an assessment about what you would have revealed if you were to activate Copilot, so that we can make sure that it is an intentional design and that we are not revealing risk that we didn't intend.
So one thing I've learned, over the years as we moved from implementing client projects on premise to more of the cloud, is we had to become a Microsoft Solutions direct cloud license provider, right? Because the clients now needed our solutions with licenses that are in the cloud, obviously. But when we came into that role, right, we actually didn't realize that when we were helping them set up the licenses, most businesses were not paying attention, right, to that license price. Usually you have an IT person who's deploying the licenses, and then most businesses, that's on a credit card or some sort of reoccurring subscription. The accounting team, right, is just paying those bills. So it was interesting as we shifted from on-premise to the cloud to realize how much waste was in these licenses, right? Unused licenses, not the right type of services needed. And when you think about it, this opened up the door in a lot of cases for savings where people actually could take that money and use it for the project they were invested in. Not just for that one project, for long term. We've seen companies reduce their license fee in half. So I'm just throwing that out there because it was a simple win. We weren't even expecting that was an easy win for clients.
Yeah, Robert, I couldn't agree more with you on this side, right? This is one part about understanding what your technology is, but the reality is that subscription intelligence review is a financial play too, right? If you are chartering planes with empty seats and paying for a bunch of licenses and subscriptions and features you're not activating yet, right? Then we're throwing good money at bad. So it's a wonderful way to get you started on the right point.
All right. So Andy, once a company has visibility right into its environment, what comes next?
Governance, Robert. Governance becomes everything. So when people think about governance, they automatically think about it as the brakes. And in this case, governance is the steering. Think about that senior employee analogy. If we gave them access to everything inside of a tenant with no structure, no boundaries, they're going to operate based on whatever they see. Right? They might see a 5-year-old version of a file, but take it as gospel because that was in their deal. AI behaves the same way, right? So why this matters is that governance is the steering wheel, not the brakes. It doesn't stop AI from working. It tells AI what halls in the corporate office it can travel down, what rooms it can enter, which doors should stay closed. Governance gives direction, accuracy, and control. It does not have to slow the business down.
Now, I know, Andy, when we started this stage in our business, a lot of people think governance, compliance, things stop, right? They want to get to the fun stuff. But when you think about what government stands for, it's simply stated, right? You can answer it in 3 questions. Who can access the data? What can they do with it? And how is it monitored and controlled over time? Most leaders think government slows things down. How do you see governance in this process? And why is it so relevant for an AI activation?
Yeah, I mean, look, risk in governance is what most people miss, right? So I'll say this point over and over again. Copilot or AI doesn't create risk, it reveals it. So if your data governance has gaps, then you go to activate Copilot, it's going to surface them because it shows what you have access to accurately and efficiently. So the question is the access been structured intentionally? That really becomes the key because without it, you are revealing risks that you didn't intend to, right?
And again, when we think about it in our environment, it was a challenge, right, to perform some of these steps, right? Because you have to consciously think about when you're creating documents, when you're sending emails, right? In some cases, it's automated, right? The system will track it and monitor it. but how do I want to classify the data? And is it even relevant anymore? And realizing that, again, you could give someone appropriate access to the right rooms in the right areas, but if they walk into the room and they don't realize what data on the library is outdated, what they shouldn't look at, right? Again, you're having risks for these AI agents. So it became clear again, without governments, our tenant had limited structure. We had no way to tell AI what was relevant, and what was secure and what was garbage, and what needed to be, again, archived and removed. The experience changed how I think of AI readiness. What do most people miss about Copilot and this risk, Andy?
Yeah. When we start thinking about the governance side and the way a lot of this context gets in, I mean, there's some simple examples, right? If we don't have any governance or steering, and we've got a sensitive HR file. It has our policy stance, it has, payrolls and things of this nature. If there's no governance and we haven't protected who can access this and what they can do with it, well then theoretically we've just created the AI's ability to cite it for everyone. So we don't want someone going in there and looking up what a master's salary would be or what a grade or a profile and having AI respond. So I can't stress this enough. The governance is not the brakes. It's the steering for the things that we want to drive forward.
So, Andy, you don't hire a new employee and immediately hand them your most critical processes and confidential information. You build trust over time. Where we see many AI headlines is that they focus on large companies replacing employees with agents. That's not where we see the average business. Andy, what are you seeing instead?
Yeah, Robert, activating early wins to garner and build that trust through the journey is so critical to adoption, right? I mean, that's always been the Achilles heel of technology. It advances so fast, but you can only drive change in a business as the staff can adopt to it. So when we think about the right place to start and how to really take advantage of this, the right starting point is simple, right? Leveraging meeting recaps, simple Copilot chats. I mean, how many times have we all spent looking for a file? We know we put it somewhere. Was it in downloads? Was it in OneDrive? Did we put it in SharePoint or Teams, right? So being able to bring the AI capabilities into search and summarizing files to make sure it's the right version, it's updated in time. These are the low risk, high value ways that we can start building confidence in the tool and the technology, but also trust within the organization and the user community. This helps leaders see directly how AI can improve daily work without immediately touching critical processes, right? This allows them to crawl, walk, run, to enter from the shallow end of the pool and move. And as that dexterity in the team builds, there's more and more opportunity to rid that employee of the mundane, repetitive work and liberate them to really work on deep knowledge exercises. You've got a team of people in the organization that know your unique businesses, they know your unique workflows, your products. We want to harness and keep those people, not replace them with AI. We want to take the silly, simple things off their plate and allow them to refocus on things that are going to really drive production in your business. That's how I see an early activation winning and building trust for a lot of our audience, Robert.
Got it. And Andy, that's an important point, right? Change management matters. Considering all parties in any project, it's critical for a successful outcome. AI should make people more effective, right? Not create confusion or fear because of the business skipped the communication step. So once a business builds trust with an early AI cases, how do they move towards that automation?
Yeah. So as businesses mature, Robert, they move into automation. I want you to think about, workflow orchestration, simple processes. This email brings this attachment, it automates and moves it to this folder and notifies this person. Those workflow orchestrations are where we start moving from activated to automated, but we're not agentic yet. This is what I'm describing that a lot of people are using as agent washing, because these workflow automations have existed for many years. First they were RPA bots, then they were flows or power automates or Zapiers or if that then this. These were all early illustrations here. So as we build the trust and the dexterity to move from chats and answering questions and summarizing, now we can start isolating where there's repetitive patterns in a workflow, and we can start automating those workflows. As that happens, that becomes part of the steering and the governance for future agentic workloads. We build trust in identity, we build trust in data, we build trust in governance, and then that'll create the trust in the process design. You cannot automate, Robert, what we don't understand.
So this is where the business really starts to actually have work done, right? At this point, your AI is not just assisting anymore, it's executing, right? This is a shift from Copilot to something closer to what I would say autopilot, right? In Microsoft ERP systems, for example, sales and purchasing agents can actually start helping customer request or process vendor invoices, right? The mundane items that take in, typical users a lot of time in the day to resolved, right? And most of these have approval processes built in that you could turn on at the beginning. As you build trust in that agent, right, it allows you to start turning off some of those, quality control areas where it makes sense. There's no difference to a human employee, right? You're going to give them a little bit of time, oversee them, and actually mentor them, right, before they do the right thing. So Andy, as we get more agentic, right, there's no difference to a human employee and how you would basically start them on, tricycle, right, or guardrails before you actually just let them replying. What does that require underneath the surface when you're dealing with AI and Microsoft?
Yes. Underneath the surface, again, those three critical protections to understand identity, devices, and data, that's really that prerequisite item. When we start getting into the governance side of this, right, we want to make sure that we're giving them the information that that agent or that person can succeed with, right? So for example, if I bring in a really smart, bright, senior level employee, am I going to communicate with them like an intern? Or am I going to start giving them access to the information that's going to help them succeed? So in this particular case, for us to move down an automation path, we need to make sure that that we understand the plumbing, the baselines. We've already built the trust through a couple of those details, but then we start connecting to that context and information so that that agent understands your environment, your setup, your data patterns, right? That's the difference of being a freelancer versus being an internal employee. You know where all the setups are. That's why Copilot has such a big advantage, because it already lives inside of your tenant that has already set up your departments, your org chart. It knows where you file. It knows how you run meetings. So the more of this context that we can connect in, the better we're set for that path towards automation and the journey eventually landing in agentic.
So Andy, I want to shift a little bit because as a partner with Microsoft, right, we joined up for, let's just say, bleeding/leading edge technology by joining what's called the Frontier program, right? And I know clients and companies, any organization that's in Microsoft has access to it. Can they join and should they join? So for those not familiar with the Microsoft Frontier program, what does it mean for the average business? How should SMBs think about some leading edge technologies without becoming that bleeding edge?
Yeah. So, well, let's first talk about what Microsoft Frontier is, right? Frontier is a program, not a product. So if you're hearing a lot of this thing in the open market, I want you to understand that. Think about it as a preview channel for Microsoft newest AI capabilities inside of Microsoft 365. So a Copilot beta feedback loop would probably be a really accurate description of this. And it's where enterprises, early adopters can go there to be on the front line, to test what's coming and to see how that's going to respond ultimately in their environment. For most small and mid-sized businesses, Robert, the right approach is not that bleeding edge, right? It's leading edge. Let's get through the activation and the automation and work our way there. We'll validate security. We pull through governance. We understand workflow impact before we deploy broadly, right? If you can't govern it, understand it, you shouldn't scale it. And Frontier is really about scaling that bleeding edge frontline technology. Now, you and I live in that world. We have to know what's coming, and so we play with it. And I promise, as we talk to some of you that may have some questions, I'd be happy to further detail where some Frontier features might be interesting to you on your journey towards agentic. But for most of the audience, I want you to picture that's that bleeding sort of leading edge. We want to be just one step back for stability to make sure that you establish and retain the trust in these AI tools.
Okay. Let's switch over a little bit, Andy, to economics, right? We see in the headlines the billions, not millions, but billions of dollars that are going to AI capital expenditures, new chips, new data centers that no one wants in their they're downtown or they're local, but they're coming, right? And these are one of the key, leaders of the economy right now, right? To be honest. But for those companies that are already investing in Microsoft, right, and the ecosystem, what subscription investment is actually required? Do businesses already have some of what they need? What is ready inside of the platform?
Yeah. So with a commercial M365 license, and what I mean by that is a business license, whether that's an enterprise license or a small business license. If you're already with those licenses, then most businesses have what they need inside of the platform itself. Copilot Chat is available to all business grade customers. Now, there are some subtleties to this. When I say Copilot Chat, it'd be akin or similar to going into OpenAI or Claude or XAI and going in there and chatting with their free version, right? You can ask questions, it'll respond. You theoretically have access to one of the smartest freelancers you've ever had access to. And if you know how to speak to it in chat, it can start answering. What it doesn't have, though, is those guardrails and context. So if you just want to dip your toe in the water and understand how to chat and get some answers, let it help you there, that is included with any business grade Microsoft subscription. But where this gets really exciting is when you then add on a paid Copilot for Microsoft 365 license. This activates a really critical feature inside the tenant. It allows you to go from chat to something known as Work IQ. Work IQ was stemmed from the Microsoft Graph, which is trillions of signal from everything that's connected inside that Microsoft ecosystem. What this allows us to do is take this wonderfully talented agent, this large language AI, and we need to now lay this into that Work IQ. Now it can access your meetings, your files, effectively everything you have access to and can see and use, it can now support and assist with you. But to do that, we have to activate that add-on license. So if you just want to chat, it's already in all your commercial subscriptions. If you want to start moving into automation and really getting into deep context work, then we want to add an M365 Copilot license so that we can activate that Work IQ mode for the audience. Okay. The gap isn't really buying more technology. It's activating what the business already owns and knows so that it can use that context to perform for you.
Okay. So again, going back to our business office environment, right? It's like using chat is looking at any questions outside of your office. But if you turn on this agent, right, that's going to open up Work IQ, it can answer any questions about your business as well, right? Anything that Microsoft is grabbing in the environment. But what we've seen, Andy, is those clients that are coming into Teams meetings, and we see some of the end users using these free tools, right?
Yes.
Free is never free. So what should they worry about when they go to a business Teams meeting and they're talking about sensitive information and they're like, oh, let me use this free tool so that I can save my notes, make life easier. What are they doing there?
Yeah. Robert, free's never free, right? If it's a free product, there's still energy consumption, there's still coding going on in the background, right? So how do they really do it for free? Free is that your attention, your data, your experience becomes the product. So at a bare minimum, if you're sitting and you're opening into these tools in a free account, you have no guardrails, you have no security, you have no ability to block it from going up to train the model for it to cite for everybody. When you go into the Copilot lane, even if you're just using the free chat version of Copilot, Microsoft establishes a perimeter, right? So free's not free, you're the product, it's your data, but if you're using the chat one, you're already in a paid subscription. So what I can say is that you're gonna have the same experiences, right? Copilot is the user interface for artificial intelligence. We often say it's the UI for AI. So because you're using this system inside your tenant, you're not training the model outside. Microsoft has put a border around your tenant to keep your chats and data inside of it. And that is a huge distinction.
So, like, the reason you won't let me install Candy Crush on my phone because it's free. Same concept. Watch out for those AI tools, right? And if there's a way for IT or business to consider blocking them, consider it, right? Because employees are doing it whether you know it or not.
That's right. And that's part of governance, right? It is understanding who has access to what can they do with it when they get in. Your three questions from earlier in the episode, that really is what this is about. And I don't want to scare the audience, but I want to go kind of just touch on this for a second. When we're talking about the difference of training a model outside and using it inside of Microsoft, inside of Microsoft, when you have that work IQ, remember I said it can see, read, and understand everything you have. But when you're using free tools from the outside, you're now bringing them into meetings. Those meetings have context, have inferences of all kinds of data. We've already proven that AI is wildly capable. It can detect patterns, it can summarize data. So here we are thinking we're helping by putting this free tool to watch a meeting. But meanwhile, it's creating data about everything that was discussed in there. And over a long period of time, it can start to correlate patterns. We don't want that to be out of our control. So for those of you that are using some of the free versions that are out there, please stop. I want you to really look and ask questions about where that data is going. If you want that same experience, the models inside of Copilot's free version, you can access Claude, you can access ChatGPT, and through Azure, you can get to all of the different AI models. So if you have a deep affinity, we'll respect it, but I really want to make sure that you're not becoming the product.
Yeah.
That you're not.
And again, that's
that
a good point. Again, Microsoft Copilot uses all the agents, right, that are out there. Claude, it uses all of them. And as new ones become available, their goal, from what I understand, is not to make their own, but to use the best out there. So you can hire any one of those employees, but let Microsoft put a wrapper around them.
Yeah.
So,
Robert, that is the concept here, right? So, is Claude so much more capable than OpenAI or than another one? No, all of these models are wildly capable if you know how to speak to them. The one that wins is the one that has the best context. So if we're really understanding the sequence of this activation journey, getting the context in, getting that part right, independent of which large language model you like best, the context is going to what makes every one of them better.
all right, Andy, without getting in a time machine and looking 5 years in advance, right? What comes next in AI, feels like software is more like a new kind of virtual employee, right? We're seeing science fiction films that I was around with when I was young becoming reality or beyond that. So think of AI is not as a tool anymore as it progresses, right? And not just a role. It's something that has a voice, a persona, a visible presence inside of platforms that people already use, right? In the Microsoft world, agents can already show up in teams and work inside the flow and not off to the side, right? And we think about robots and where things might go, right? We might be talking to a virtual person a few years down the road. So Andy, how do you see what's changing in pricing and planning for the future?
Yeah, I think in some cases, Robert, we all have already spoke to an agent unbeknowingly, right? That's just the reality of where we're at. But I think you bring on something really, I don't have a crystal ball. You and I have been reading patterns and tea leaves from Microsoft for many years. So I feel pretty comfortable with this answer. But as agents and automations become more capable, we know pricing is going to change. My opinion today, AI still very much looks like software, but over time, I think that it will look a lot more like labor, by user, by task, by consumption, by agent action. How many activities can it do? So if we're getting down that scenario and we start looking at per user licensing, usage credits, metered agent actions, right? We need to understand and plan for where this could go. We get really excited on our roll to agentic, but now all of a sudden agents are not simply just paying for an AI feature. We're just paying for a different type of employee, right? They might have a name, a persona, a face, an identity. So I think it's really important. But my advice is, again, still, it's not just for the technology, but for governance. We want to make sure on this journey that we understand that sequence so that we're ready for any change in pricing or accommodation that the tech sector may push.
Right. And again, a thought point for leaders that are sit here and going, what does my next year's budget look like? What's going on? Again, we've already seen in the news companies that have blown their year budget, right, in a matter of months. So just think about, again, as you onboard those AI data centers that are, being built at billions of dollars, you're going to be paying for that in some way. So just consider the model as it's being accepted. The pricing will not stay the change or stay the same. And ultimately, when you think of Microsoft, other tools like Azure, we always tell about clients it's like a utility bill. The more you consume it, the more it's going to cost. If anything, it might be an hourly rate or something else. But consider your payroll, just like for a human, might actually have a budgeted line item for agents that you have to factor in for an annual budget.
And if you got governance right, Robert, they are like bringing in a wildly capable freelancer with deep knowledge. So it kind of all stacks to that same approach, right? We don't know exactly where that pattern's going to go. Neither you nor I. We see some writing on the wall, but I do want to make sure that on your journey to thoughtfully connected AI, that we are methodically moving through ready, activation, automation. Automation's the starting point before we go agentic. And while you're building that out, we have some time to really see where the patterns are going from cost and consumption.
Gotcha.
Great topic, Robert.
So, Andy, we covered a lot today, but like any other project, we recommend organizations take a crawl, walk, run approach. The first step is not the grand AI strategy, it's visibility. What do you already own? What is active? Where are the risks? Why does this visibility have to come first?
Yeah, I mean, companies have to start with visibility, Robert. It is the logical starting point. If you can't see it, you can't govern it. And if you can't govern it, why are you scaling it? This means understanding your licenses, your identity posture, your data structure, your risk exposure, right? Your actual usage. Once you know where you are, you can decide where you want to go next. I mean, jokingly, like we get in the car and say, all right, where are we going? And I say, go left. Well, keep making lefts and we're just going to do a big circle. So we need to understand where we are so that we can plot the course sequentially to where we're going. The activation starts with answering, where are you today?
And as you mentioned, without visibility, every AI decision is a guess. So, what is the one question every executive should be asking?
Yeah, every executive should be asking this one direct question: where am I now, and where do I want to be? This question forces the right conversation. It moves from AI hype to actual planning and methodical sequential activation. So the closing sequence for me, foundation first, then activation, then scale. If you want to see what your building really looks like, we built these complimentary reviews for you. And if you want to go deeper and deeper down, we have a very simple path to emphatically answer exactly that. Where am I today? So that we can plot together your journey to thoughtfully connected and useful AI.
So it's not about moving first, right? It's about moving in the right order. Build AI that fits your business, not the other way around. Andy, bring us home with this.
Yeah, look, where I recommend starting is answering that exact question. So we're going to put some commentary in the notes of this episode and some of the post-production items. Please click on integrato.tech, integratotech.com/AI readiness, or click the link in the notes. This is really going to help you to summarize a lot of the information that we covered today, which I know has a lot of excitement and a lot of worry and concern. But if we just understand where we are and where we want to be, we can plot a very sequential journey to make sure that you are having success on your journey to agentic AI.
So, Andy, when you think about Integrato, right, and technology thoughtfully connected, right, we want to thank the audience for listening. And if this resonated, share it with another leader who's trying to separate the signal from the noise. We'll see you next time. However, as fast as you want to go, this is where it begins.
Okay. So staying on one more topic with you, I'm going to improv for a minute on this side. We often will talk about this journey in this campaign where we start going from interested to ready, right? And then from ready to activated. What is really important is that along that same journey of activation, we have to build some confidence and some capabilities within the staff, right? There's always that element of adopting tech. The worst thing we can do is give someone the most powerful tool to access information and have them talk to them like an intern. We need to teach some basic understanding. The analogies that are key to our business have to be defined. The certain tones and instructions. If we help build this dexterity early on as we're moving into this activation, then the journey in the sequence when we get into automation and agentic accelerates. Governance is not the brakes, it's the steering. And when we do this right, you're going to accelerate your journey to the agentic outcome.
Right. But that brings up another point that we always talk about. And we always say when we start any project, the technology is easy, right? It's the people in the process. Yes. So don't forget the people. All of your individuals are going to adopt AI at a level that's appropriate for them. So consider that when you're rolling out the modules. Not everyone's going to be the first adopters. Try to find ways that they can control and turn their foot off the throttle in such a way that gives them empowerment without scaring them, right? So again, I think for businesses, the people is still important, the most important part of the equation, yes, even if they're human.
Very much so. And they may have natural trepidations. They may be worried of hearing these horror stories that are going on in the AI market about they don't want to be the one that uploaded data or that caused the bad refund or the leak of Samsung's code. They don't want to be the one responsible, so they have trepidation. So as we run through this journey, Robert, like we've talked about the CPA firm that wanted to bring in full automation. And we said, look, before we go to full agentic development, let's focus on something simplistic. How do we drive work papers? Let's make sure we've got a chat agent that can understand, help us prep files and work papers inside a Copilot where it never leaves our secure environment, and then we're able to walk them through a response. As we build trust and accuracy in this, now we can add capabilities. It can build the work papers and stage an email to a client. It can build a work paper, stage an email, and notify your counterparts that the file's ready for investigation or for loading into the next system. These are the pathways that we really want to focus down. Now, I used the CPA example, something near and dear to you.
But let's be, right? They call me the recovering CPA because I hated compliance and I hated putting together work papers. So I know any CPA would love to have an agent that puts that together quickly. So I would see real adoption in something as simple as that.
Yes, but to go full-blown agentic and say, you're going to understand all of these nuanced rules, all of these firm policies, all of these firm practices, there's too big of a gap for it to bridge, for us to build trust and have it accurate. So when we start looking at this, we go through some simple automations and lightweight agents to build the trust. Now, bringing this governance as the steering. What are the firm's standard out procedures? How am I handling an influencer that's renting Airbnbs for content creation versus a normal business that can't take that expense? How am I writing a lot of those rules into this program? Those are the things that allow us to move down that maturation cycle towards agentic. But if we haven't built it the right way with governance, the steering, it doesn't know what lane to drive in, doesn't know what hall it can travel down, and it certainly doesn't know what door it can open.
But going back to another example, right? We talked about there's a lot of systems that have like expense reimbursements for employees. You can program rules that say, if it's this amount, go here. If it's this person, do this, right? But this is where if you're really going from those sort of shadow programs to real agents, if you have a smart agent that can read your expense policy, right? It can determine that on that invoice, this was a premium liquor and you're not going to pay for it versus something else. So this is where it becomes interesting. You don't have to hard code what you used to have to do if you put the agent in the middle of these processes. And this is where I think the excitement becomes for me and others, right? Is how do we make that work to make life easier?
And Robert, that was the goal. The goal was to really drive this more of not replacing an employee because now this agent is managing this expensive policy, right? It's making sure that we have highly accurate processing and a simple way to flag an exception, to notify, so that the person that used to manually do all this is now focused on the impact and the sensitivity of having that dialogue with the employee who may have went afoul of the policy, right? What I need from that subject lead is that ability to connect and educate the staff, not every occurrence. What I can automate is the speed in which all that happens. Now we can start to really repurpose deep knowledge work and help the business drive forward. And those are the conversations that I'm so excited to have with this audience, our customers, our new prospects, and the folks that are genuinely excited about this journey to AI agentic development.
Absolutely.